Okay, well, thank you, Eder. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. So, as Eder said, I'll be sharing a little bit what we've been doing in the last couple of years in West Africa. So, we've been working in São Tomé and Príncipe, which is an archipelago located in the Gulf of Guinea, right over the equator line. So it's a Portuguese-speaking country, and two main islands, the island of São Tomé and the island of Príncipe. It's of volcanic origin and amazingly beautiful, as you can see by these images. So a large part of the population in São Tomé lives from fisheries, and fisheries play a really important role in the socio-economic context of this country. So before we heading to this place, we did a bit of homework, and we knew that the guys from California Academy of Sciences have been going there for the past 15 years, although they've been focusing mostly on terrestrial biodiversity research. There were a few expeditions there, namely one sponsored by National Geographic, who came out with a report saying that São Tomé is biodiversity hotspot, so for that part of the Atlantic. The same expedition came out with one of the few papers published about the marine fish from that area, and they compiled a checklist of the species occurring in São Tomé. So they've concluded that there's a lot of species that were still remain to be described, and including some endemic ones. So we went there in 2014. Our goal was to try to record as many species as possible through underwater photography, so we could present to potential clients, because as most of you know, Flying Sharks is a collections company. So while we were there, we realized that there were actually a lot of more than we expected, a very interesting species from an ornamental perspective, including the endemic ones mentioned in the paper. So in the bottom left there, you can see a small grouper, and this guy had not been described yet, like Peter Wirtz said in his paper from 2007. So we got in touch with this guy, this researcher, and he said that the animal wasn't described yet because apparently they lost the specimens they've collected in 2006 while they were there. So he asked us if we could collect a few specimens, so we did. It's a relatively abundant fish, so we would see them in relatively shallow water. So we did collect a few animals, and we shipped them to Peter, and he finally published the fish description. This was in April this year. Serranus pulcheri is the name. So while there, back again in 2014, we were not just diving, we were also doing some work on land. We went to the local markets and the fisheries landing sites, and we've seen that the scenario is pretty scary. Most of the fish are very small, and I mean, this is cowfish. I didn't even know this was edible, but they're everywhere, and you can see most of the fish are very, very small. So while talking to the fishermen community and also the general population, there was a common concern that the abundance of fish has been decreasing drastically, especially in the last decade, and also the mean size of the fish has been decreasing. So this is a clear sign of depletion. So overfishing is happening, even though we're just talking about artisanal fishing. There's no industrial fishing, at least not in coastal waters. So we've also had several meetings with local NGOs, the General Department of Fisheries from São Tomé, and also Ministry of the Environment, and they all share the same concern as the fishermen and the local, population regarding their fisheries status. So there was a common request from the local authorities. They asked us if we could give them some help, and we could elaborate a poster of the commercial fisheries and also a book of the local coastal fishes. So we got some funding from IAC, and logistic support from local diving center. And we were able to finally go there in November 2015. So me and two other researchers, one from the Azores and one from Brazil, we were there and we tried to photograph as many animals as possible and try to understand what were the most common commercial species. And we've photographed about 50 species. And this came out in a poster that it was recently published. So I've got this poster for 2 weeks now. It's been just printed, and I've got a few spare ones, so drop by our booth and we can give you one. So besides that, and regarding now the book, so we had already a large number of species registered in photos, but there was a lot of them missing according to the papers. So we realized that we had to do some specific dives in order to try to get as many species as possible, namely in different habitats, like sandy bottoms, to find some flatfish and other animals that live in this kind of habitat. So we also did some deep dives to try to find some different species, including this beautiful butterfly fish that usually lives below 30 meters. So we did some night dives because, as you all know, some fish have nocturnal habits and they just come out at night. So it was important to cover also nightlife. And we did some dives, like we say, in the blue, so in open ocean, try to target the pelagic species. So this all came out in around 120 species for this book. The book is being done at this moment. It's not. Hopefully, it will be published before the end of the year, and it talks about, well, general introduction about São Tomé and this geographic context, general biodiversity, the endemisms of the area, and the different habitats that exist in this area. So the intertidal, the rocky reefs, the marl beds, sandy floors. And then, well, we've got the template for each species with basically with icons for the different characteristics, because most of the population there can't read. So this is important. So while we were diving and trying to get as many photos as possible of the animals there, we had some scientific bonuses. We found some species that were not previously recorded for this area. This includes, for example, the Azores chromis that was known to occur till North Africa, and we found a group at about 40 meters deep. Also, dolphin fish, Mahimahi, we found it was landed by a local fisherman. It was not given for this area, for the islands. The Alfonsino, it's a deep water fish. We also find one in the local market. And this guy, it's sea basslet, Lipopoma emanueli. This was described in 2012 for the Cape Verde Islands and registered for Senegal in 2014. We've seen 6 animals between 35 and 45 meters deep, so it's a relatively deep water species. We collected one animal and for analysis, and we concluded it was Lipopoma emanueli, so another new species for the area. So we have also help from some people there, and we asked them to photograph as many species as possible. And one of our friends photographed the whale shark, a threatened species, as you all know. Also, Mobile thurstoni, endangered species. It was also photographed by our friend, and it was for sale in a for local restaurant. Apparently, they sell these devil rays as regular rays for food. The same for Chilean devil ray. It was also caught by a fisherman, and it was for sale in a restaurant. So we got to about 2 to 10 species for this area, including those 3 elasmobranchs, and we managed to publish a paper recently on these new records. Also, while we were diving, we reported several new cleaning symbioses between fish, so 6 new reports for species from this area that are new. We also used BRUV, so baited remote underwater video, and we were able to do footage of deeper water, so down to 250 meters deep. We were able to do several hours of video, and we found at least 2 species that are almost for sure new for science, including that moray eel and the goby. We also, while we were there, we were invited by the local Portuguese school to give a talk to their students on several topics, like being a marine biologist, biodiversity of São Tomé, the problematic of fisheries in São Tomé, alternative activities related to the sea, and of our projects, so the book and the poster. And it was really overwhelming how the students reacted to what we presented. And it's also concerning how much they don't know about their country and about the richness of their biodiversity. So I think that was very positive. So in conclusion, we know that São Tomé is still, its marine fauna is still very understudied. The local fisheries are jeopardizing ecosystem sustainability, and it's urgent to establish protection initiatives and conservation for the local marine ecosystems, namely through marine protected areas and fishing legislation. And it's also important to drive some fishermen to start doing different activities than fishing, like ecotourism, for example. And these scientific studies are absolutely crucial to improve the knowledge on local marine communities, to understand its resilience to the local threats, and also to help in the decision-making process for conservation initiatives. I'd like to thank IAC, IAC, and Costa Norte Diving Center for the support, and thank you all.